inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love that.
Okay, guys. This is going to get, we're going deep. Okay. We're going deep. We're going deep diving. We got a UAP hearing tomorrow scheduled Wednesday, November 13th. It will be at 10:30 my time in Texas, 10:30 Central, 11:30 Eastern American time. I will be live streaming that hearing. So please come back tomorrow and watch it with me and the crew, the other vetters. But today we are going to be doing a deep dive into the witnesses and just the hearing in general that's going on. I was trying to make a video, but honestly, it would have taken me a week to really put together something comprehensive. And I thought, you know what? Let's just go live and we'll just deal with it live here. There's a lot to get into, y'all. Look, if you're trying to prepare for this hearing for tomorrow, this is the video to watch. So share this video. We'll go through all the witnesses, everything that's upcoming. We'll talk about concerns, things that we're hopeful for, and all of that. As there's a lot to get into here, y'all. There's rabbit holes beyond rabbit holes, spider webs of, information and data. So let's just start with the obvious. First, let me say welcome to all the veterans that are watching, and thank you to the mods that are taking care of the chat today. Thank y'all so much. Let's start with this. All right. So these are the 4 people that are going to be testifying tomorrow. All right. On the left there, screen left, right right below the logo. So let's start there. Right. You've got journalist Michael Schellenberger. Then after that, next to him, you've got Luis Elizondo. Next to Luis Elizondo, you have Mike Gold, who's kind of a new name, and we're definitely going to be diving deep on Mike Gold more than anyone. And then we've got former Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, all testifying tomorrow at this hearing, right? So let's just look into who these people are, right? And why should they be testifying? What can we be hopeful for? I will say this, they have released their pre-written testimony, right? So we can kind of already gauge what they're going to be talking about. Now, we can't gauge what questions Congress is going to be asking them, right, as follow-ups. So, but we will have some idea, right? All right, so let's start with Michael Schellenberger right there on the left. All right, let's do this. So Michael Schellenberger right here. You know what? Let's do it better. Yeah, screw it. That'll work. Who is Michael Schellenberger? Right, he's a journalist. Let's go to his Wikipedia. All right, so when you Google search him, this one comes up, right? He's a professor, author, and journalist who writes on a wide range of topics, including free speech, homelessness, and the environment. He's the co-founder of the Breakthrough Institute and the California Peace Coalition. Schellenberger founded the pro-nuclear nonprofit Environmental Progress in 2016. And he is the one that famously released the bombshell story, right, quote unquote, about this secret UFO program called Immaculate Constellation. And part of his particular, how should I say, part of his particular testimony, right, was released. And it is the longest of all of them. It's like over 200 pages, y'all. So we're clearly not going to be going through that. Let me remove this. Hang on. I'm going to bring up. This will be a little messy, y'all, because we've got a lot to go through. So just bear with me today. Hang out, and you will find out everything you need to know. All right, let's bring up. this. All right. So Douglas Dean Johnson, who I had a little back and forth with on Twitter last week. We are cool. And he has been releasing all of the witness testimony, right, for all four people. And let's go quickly so we can see Schellenberger's, right? And okay, boom, boom. Hang on. Again, this is oh my god, this is a lot, y'all. Y'all see that? All right. I'll tell you what. Let's do it this way. Okay. All right. So, testimony by Michael Schellenberger to the Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Government Innovation, and the Subcommittee on National Security, the Border and Foreign Affairs of the House Oversight and Accountability Committee for a hearing on unidentified anomalous phenomena exposing the truth. Right. Chairman Mace, Chairman Grothman, Ranking Member Connolly, Ranking Member Garcia, and members of the subcommittees. Thank you for inviting my testimony. So see, this is basically they're writing out how they're going to exactly talk. Right. Now, again, look at all this. Ho, haha. This is what he submitted, y'all. Are you seeing this? I'm still going. I'm not even halfway. I think you get the point, right? Now, it's like an appendix, right? So he's got his testimony at the top, right? And then he just provides a bunch of references, right, to what he's reporting on. A lot of it's from the Black Vault, okay, John Greenwald. So anyone that's been talking smack about him, you have Schellenberger literally including his reporting in his reporting. So I'm not going to name names, but I see people on Twitter, especially who call out John Greenwald from the Black Vault, who make fun of him, who say, honestly, pretty vile things about him and his family and what he does. And people, again, who are going to this hearing, who support certain witnesses up there. Again, it's such a weird thing. So regardless, shout out to Greenwald for getting this recognition because it's well deserved, right? So his stuff is going to be entered into this congressional hearing. Now, a couple things that do kind of worry me a little bit is like, we're talking Reddit poster brought up and things like that. Like, I don't know, am I thinking wrong? Like Reddit? We're bringing Reddit into the congressional hearing. Maybe we're just in a new era and Reddit is part of things. Like, I don't know. I guess I would need that explained to me. I'm not very smart. Right. So that seems odd to me. But again, you can go and find all of this and read it if you want. Again, there's just so much to go off of here. But essentially, yes, what Schellenberger is going to be testifying to is quite a bit. Now, one question that people had is, we got a journalist testifying, right? Michael Schellenberger, a journalist, he's going to testify. And I looked up how often do journalists testify, right, before Congress. Honestly, quite a bit. So it's actually not that unusual to have a journalist testify. Take that for what you will. Now, Michael Schellenberger is very interesting. Just in the sense that he's out of this loop of people, but he has reported on UAPs before, famously last year, right before David Grush testified. After David Grush come out, though, but he had an article, right? Tons of sources, whatever, right? So this new whistleblower report that mentioned Immaculate Constellation, many people thought that whistleblower, who has yet to be named, right, or shown. Some people did try to dox him, so some people do know who he is online, and they did try to dox him, but I guess that got squashed, thank God. But some people believe he was going to testify, and he, maybe backed out for whatever reason, and Michael Schellenberger is taking his place. But I don't know, right? There's been a lot of interesting things behind the scenes of how this hearing has come into play. You had it originally scheduled for September. Chris Mellon was going to testify. That didn't happen. He was going to testify at this hearing, but he's going on vacation, so he can't make it. Just word came out in the last couple of days that Avi Loeb was also asked to testify and what his availability was, right? So maybe there's many other people that we don't know about. There was even a rumor going around that David Grush was going to be testifying again. Just a rumor, and one I did not believe, to be honest with you. You know, a lot out there about this, but they did release the witness list and we have it, right? So Schellenberger testifying, good, bad, I don't know. We won't know till we see it, but it is common for journalists to testify because they have sources and they can feel they're not protected under the First Amendment to not testify, if that makes sense. Now, that doesn't mean they have to give up their sources. They can go to jail for it, but they can be asked under oath to give up their sources and to say, who told you that? Right? Now, they can decide in that moment what they're going to do as a journalist, but they are not protected under the First Amendment to be asked to testify or subpoenaed or whatever, right, in front of Congress. So it is kind of a common practice. A lot of journalists do testify before Congress. So putting any, you know, again, take that as you will, whatever you think of that. It's more the meat and potatoes of what they testify to, right? Okay, so we got Schellenberger. Let's keep going here. Our next one is, well, Luis Elizondo, right? What is Luis Elizondo going to be testifying to? Well, hang on. Let's bring this up. You know what? I'm going to have it up on the screen. Y'all can watch me work this here. Where was I? Dean Johnson. Okay, here we go. Yeah, and we got a new message from Chris Mellon from today, which I'll be reading in just a moment. Okay, that's Michael Gold. We're coming back to see. He released all of these for this. So look, let's read a little bit of Luis Elizondo's because his is definitely a lot shorter. So this is the written testimony of Luis Elizondo intended for the hearing tomorrow, right? Greetings, Chairwoman Mays, Chairman Grothman, ranking members, Connolly and Garcia, and members of the committee. It is my honor and privilege to testify before you on the issue of unidentified anomalous phenomena, formerly known as UFOs. Not formerly known, Luis. I still call them UFOs. I don't know about you. A lot of people do. On behalf of our brave men and women in uniform and across the intelligence community, as well as my fellow Americans who have awaited this day, thank you for your leadership on this important matter. Let me be clear. UAP are real. Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. Furthermore, the U.S. is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries. I believe we are in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race, one funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies. For many years, I was entrusted with protecting some of our nation's most sensitive programs. In my last position, I managed a special access program on behalf of the White House and the National Security Council. As such, I appreciate the need to protect certain sensitive intelligence and military information. I consider my oath to the American people first. Oh, no. I consider my oath to protect secrets as sacred and will always put the safety of the American people first. With that said, I also understand the consequences of excessive secrecy and stovepiping. Nowhere was this more apparent than in the aftermath of 9/11, which many of us remember all too well. Now, there's much more to what he's going to talk about. Let me see here. Hang on. No, not that. Right. He says, I believe that America's greatness depends on three elements: a watchful Congress, a responsive executive branch, and an informed public. Over the last decade and a half, I learned that certain UAB programs were and are operating without any of these elements. Although much of my government work on the UAP subject still remains classified, that's interesting. Excessive secrecy has led to grave misdeeds against loyal civil servants, military personnel, and the public, all to hide the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos. A small cadre within our own government involved in the UAP topic has created a culture of suppression and intimidation that I have personally been victim to, along with many of my former colleagues. This includes unwarranted criminal investigations, harassment, and efforts to destroy one's credibility. Most Americans would be shocked to learn that the Pentagon's very own public affairs office openly employs a professional psychological operations officer as the singular point of contact for any UAP-related inquiries from citizens and the media. This is unacceptable. I think he's talking about Susan Go or Susan Goff, however you say her name, which is interesting. He's calling her out in this hearing, a professional psychological operations officer. I mean, but Luis Elizondo is counterintelligence. So I don't know. I guess we're calling things out. Many of my former colleagues and I provided classified testimony to both the Department of Defense and the Intelligence Community Inspector General. Many of us have subsequently been targeted by this cabal with threats to our careers, our security clearances, and even our lives. This is not hyperbole, but a genuine fact, and this is wrong. And then he goes on to, to fix these problems, I propose 3 principal actions, right? All of this. But what's interesting is no mention of being the head of ATIP. No mention that like Roswell's real, that he was told by Hal Puthoff. Like no mention of orbs, right, in his house. No mention of remote viewing into a terrorist so that they see some sort of angel-looking being with other people. I find this a little interesting that none of this is included in his testimony. Now, maybe he plans on bringing some of that information out in cross-examination, right? Or I don't know if they call it cross-examination, but you know what I mean? That when Congress is going to ask them questions, clearly he's going to open to the floor. I don't know. Like, why not testify to some of that, right? Why not testify to materials that, Luis Elizondo claims to have handled, an alien implant, right, that was moving around, or, right, different materials from Chris Bledsoe, for instance, or UFO materials that he's received from other people while he was in To the Stars Academy, and while working with the government. And no mention of ATIP in his testimony there, right, in that sense, which is interesting, at least not in the way that we would think, right? He describes himself as a senior ranking member of ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, which, again, nobody's even sure if that thing even existed. I just find all of this a little strange, I'm going to lie. And again, we're just talking here, but the whole fiasco with the fake UFO photo that he had been presenting for a couple of years, I think some people are a little concerned that he's testifying, right, with that knowledge. Right? Is that going to be brought up? Is somebody going to ask him about that? Potentially, which is interesting. And I heard a lot of people saying, "Oh, hey, people are so hard on Luis Elizondo. He made a mistake. He made a mistake, y'all. Geez, people can't make mistakes and move on from it." Well, if your neighbor Jim showed you a UFO photo and it turned out to be fake, that I would understand, right? But when someone who claims to have this much knowledge about UAP and work within our government and held such high positions of office, right? He's saying he ran a special access program through the White House. Can't identify that as a fake photo is concerning. That's what makes it concerning. Of course, people can make mistakes. What are we talking about? Nobody said that, right? But I think I think someone who takes that approach is not being intellectually honest with themselves. it's okay to ask the question, maybe his credibility is a little hurt by this, right? Luis Elizondo, in sharing that photo. Someone of his caliber should, that's the argument, right? Someone of his caliber should have known that that photo was fake. And he's saying he just trusted the guy that gave it to him. So then you have to ask the question, well, how much other information does Luis Elizondo have that he just trusted the person giving it to him, right? And then you have to ask even further, how many other people in the UFO field have that same dilemma? They've just trusted what was given to them. Probably a lot. I can't imagine this is an isolated incident. That would make no sense. It just happened to be this one photo, nothing else. I doubt it. So you start to ask that question about everybody. That's the problem. So what does that mean for Luis Elizondo? I don't know, right? Everyone can make their own decision. At the end of the day, we'll have to see what he testifies to and what kind of impact it has, right? We don't know really the goal of this hearing. Was the goal of this hearing to, prove that we're not alone in the cosmos? I doubt it, because nothing I've read so far leads us to that, as you'll see as we go along. If you notice Luis Elizondo's testimony, if you read through it all, it's, again, proposing things we should do moving forward about UAP study and the stigma and, harassment and that kind of thing, which is interesting coming from Luis Elizondo, because I've personally been harassed. So doesn't make any sense, to be honest with you. You can't complain about harassment and then harass, allegedly. Let me just throw that out there. That doesn't make any sense to me. But again, unless you're in the nitty gritty, you don't know that. Unless you've been through it personally, you don't know that. So whatever, take that as you will. But I'm kind of done hiding that fact, if I'm being honest, because it keeps happening. So yeah, I find it interesting. I find it very interesting. And one thing that's kind of interesting is his name is spelled wrong up here. Lou Elizondo. Maybe that's how he spells his name always. It wasn't Luis. Maybe, but down here, he's got Luis. Oh, you can't see my, oh, right there. Okay, see, Louis. I'm just saying that's a weird misprint, right? Like, you would think that would get double checked. I mean, it's right at the top. So it's a small thing, but interesting, right? Those details are even wrong, right? And right here on the second paragraph, you can see he's saying he was the senior ranking member, but he always said he was a director. Is that the same thing? I don't know. Are these semantics? Potentially. Do these details matter? You decide. I don't know. Just pointing them out. You can decide the relevancy of them. So we got Michael Schellenberger, journalist, probably, going to be talking about Immaculate Constellation, amongst many other things. You've got, and he's trying to lay out like a whole story of what happened, right? Since the beginning to now with UFOs. Then you've got Lou Elizondo, who is basically just, advocating for, again, things we should do in the future, right? And highlighting the harassment he's been through. But again, no mention of any of the fantastical things, just claims of we're not alone and okay, I'm proof. No mention of proof. But let's move on because this gets deeper. I'm going to save my gold for last because that's the biggest deep dive. Actually, let's add that back. All right, let's go to Tim Gallaudet. So Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who served in the Navy, he is going to be testifying as well. And he's the first person that we knew about. He made it, he, came out and said that was going to happen. Now, it wasn't confirmed till recently, but, it's definitely happening. And he is going to be testifying about, well, a few things, but mainly that, you know what? I'm just going to read his thing instead of trying to put words in his mouth. Confirmation that UAPs are interacting with humanity came from me in January 2015. So listen to that statement. Confirmation that UAPs are interacting with humanity came from me in January 2015, when I was serving as the commander of the Naval Meteorology and Oceanography Command. At the time, my personnel were participating in a pre-deployment naval exercise off the U.S. East Coast that included the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group. This exercise was overseen by the United States Fleet Forces Command, led by a four-star admiral who also served as my superior officer. During this exercise, I received an email on the Navy's secure network from the operations officer of Fleet Forces Command. The email was addressed to all subordinate commanders, and the subject line read in all capital letters, "Urgent safety of flight issue." The text of the, go to the next page. The text of the email was brief but alarming, with words to the effect, "If any of you know what these are, tell me ASAP. We are having multiple near mid-air collisions, and if we do not resolve it soon, we will have to shut down the exercise." Attached to the email was what is now known as the Go Fast video, captured on the forward-looking infrared sensor on board one of the Navy F-18 aircraft participating in the exercise. The now declassified video showed an unidentified object exhibiting flight and structural characteristics unlike anything in our arsenal. The implication of the email was clear. The author was asking whether any of these recipients were aware of classified technology demonstrations that could explain these objects. Because DoD policy is to rigorously deconflict such demonstrations with live exercises, I was confident this was not the case. Basically, he's just stating, if it's our own tech, there's no way we would be allowing it interfering with these exercises, right? That's what he's basically getting at. The very next day, the email disappeared from my account and those of the other recipients without explanation. Moreover, the commander of Fleet Forces and his operations officer never discussed the incident again, even during weekly meetings specifically designed to address issues affecting exercises, like the one in which the Theodore Roosevelt Strike Group was participating. This lack of follow-up was concerning. As the Navy's chief meteorologist at the time, my primary duty was to reduce safety of flight risk. Yet it was evident that no one at that flag officer level was addressing the safety risks posed by UAPs. Instead, pilots were left to mitigate these threats on their own without guidance or support. I concluded that the UAP information must have been classified within a special access program managed by an intelligence agency, a compartmented program that even senior officials, including myself, were not read into. Last year's UAP hearing before this oversight committee confirmed that UAP-related information is not only being withheld from senior officials and members of Congress, but elements of the government are engaging in a disinformation campaign to include personal attacks designed to discredit UAP whistleblowers. Okay, but you know what also is happening? There's a disinformation campaign to discredit podcasters and YouTubers like myself who just ask questions about this. So that's interesting too. I'm just saying, if we're going to look at it all, we got to look at it all. I mean, if I'm going to be criticized last week for whether or not my title had a question mark or not, which it did, and what's a question, that much ridicule came my way. Where's that level of scrutiny for testimony and stories and witnesses and photo? You know what I mean? I mean, if we're going to vet, let's vet, right? Let's get into it, right? Or what? So I'm just saying, that's interesting to me. And I look forward to Tim Gallaudet testifying, to be honest with you, because some people were saying, oh, well, we already know this story. Yeah, but a lot of people don't, and it needs to be put on the record. And I think that particular story is interesting, that email was sent out. It was later scrubbed. There's a video floating around, right? The Go Fast video. You know what? Let me play the Go Fast video so that y'all know which one I'm talking about. It's the one where they're like, hey, look, we caught it. That thing's going against the wind. Love that video, to be honest with you. All right, let's do this. Boom. I'll just show it real quick.
Echo 61 Tango, small check over. Oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger, there's troubleshooting as soon as I get Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly!
So that's interesting. So that video right there, right? He had seen that video way before, right? And I mean, that is interesting, right? So Admiral Tim Gallaudet is sent an email about that video, right? And asking, right? Because we're having this exercise. Hey, what's going on? There's things flying around, and then it's scrubbed. Yeah, I think that's what it's testifying to, right? To find out. Now, some people have tried to debunk that video, and you can believe whatever you think it is or not. You know, I'm not an expert. I don't know. There's a lot of different theories about that. But the whole process about the email and it being deleted and no one talking about it again, I mean, that is kind of interesting, right? Now, something else that Tim Gallaudet does get into, let me see if I can pull it up. Hang on. That's not it. Hang on. So right here in one of his testimonies, he says, while I was preparing for this hearing, former DOD official Chris Mellon contacted me to seek my assistance in sharing with Congress the details of a case involving satellite imagery of UAP from 2017 that has still not been shared with Congress. Is that from Immaculate Constellation? All right. David Grush has talked about many times that there was this program using satellite imagery to find UFO crash sites and track UFOs, right, in the atmosphere. Is this all part of the same thing? I think it is. And it also makes me wonder if Tim Gallaudet is one of David Grush's witnesses, because they weren't all hostile, if you remember. Right? Some of them were friendly witnesses, right? Over 40. But yeah, okay, so there's Tim Gallaudet, right? That's him. Now let's get to Mike Gold, because to me, he's very interesting, right? And maybe just for the reason that we haven't really heard from him before. Okay, we haven't really heard from Mike Gold before, but if we, do a little digging, we kind of have heard from Mike Gold before. We just didn't know what we were hearing, right? And who he was. Let me bring up his bio. All right, there's a lot to get into with Mike Gold, y'all. All right, hang on. Go to my bookmarks. All right, can we see this? Yes. So Mike Gold, currently he's the Executive Vice President for Civil Space and External Affairs at Redwire. All right, guys, this little rabbit hole that we're about to go down the next 10 to 15 minutes, it's going to be quite interesting. All right, so stick with me. You're going to want to hear this. It involves Bigelow, Lockheed, UFO, James Lukatsky, a lot of stuff here. All right, stick with me. Mike Gold is an Executive Vice President for Civil Space and External Affairs at Redwire and former NASA Associate Administrator for the Office of International and Interagency Relations. He was also responsible for providing strategic direction to the Office of General Counsel and supporting NASA's LEO commercialization efforts. Prior to joining NASA, Mr. Gold was the vice president of civil space at Maxar Technologies, all right, and was also general counsel for the company's Radiant Solutions business unit. Additionally, all right, this is where it gets interesting. Mr. Gold spent 13 years at Bigelow Aerospace, where he established the company's Washington office, oversaw the launches of its Genesis 1 and 2 spacecraft, and received a team award from NASA for his contributions to the Bigelow Expandable Activity Module. Now, 13 years at Bigelow Aerospace, Robert Bigelow, right, and his connection to UAP, right? Now, the time that Mike Gold spent at Bigelow is interesting, because if you notice right here in this bio, right, his own bio, pay attention to Genesis 1 and 2 spacecraft launches. Those occurred in the mid-2000s, specifically around 2007, 2008, 2006, in that area, right? And there's a famous story in the UFO world around that time that involves Bigelow Aerospace, right? Lockheed Martin, a program called OSAP, and the transfer of a UFO, right? Basically, this is the best way to break it down here, right? Basically, Lockheed Martin supposedly had a crashed craft. Robert Bigelow and other people involved, James Lukatsky, Colm Kelleher, had this program called OSAP, right? And they were given funding, right? This is quote unquote the precursor to ATIP, just for purposes here, okay, of telling the story. And during this time, right, while Mike Gold is at Bigelow, supposedly they tried to, Bigelow and OSAP, which they did get funding, right, from the American government, 10 to 20 million, somewhere in there, I believe. The whole purpose of that program essentially was to get back that UFO from Lockheed, to get it back in the possession of the U.S. government's hands so we could study it, right? But it got shot down. It got shot down and it didn't happen. And OSAP went on to do other things and kind of flutter out, essentially. But that was the main purpose, that they, wanted to get this craft back from Lockheed. And I've got way more information on it, so bear with me. But I find that interesting that Mike Gold is at Bigelow during this time. Does he know about this? Right? Because if we look at Mike Gold's testimony that was released, no mention of any of this stuff. In fact, his entire testimony is just reducing the stigma, right? Because he's worked very closely with NASA. So it's all about reducing the stigma of studying UFOs. No evidence of UFOs, nothing about any of this. So was Mike Gold just kept out of the loop and didn't know? Not everyone knew. And why is he being asked to testify, right, at this hearing? And if he does know about this, why is he not testifying to this? This is what we really want to know, right? If he's connected to this Lockheed Martin UFO, right, from OSAP. So look, let's look at some videos of Mike Gold talking about UAP, right? And go from there. And then I'll come back to the Lockheed. All right, hang on here. Make sure y'all can see this well. Okay, perfect. So this is from 11 years ago. So what is that? 2013. All right. And he's being asked at a conference. You can see some shuttles in the background over his left shoulder. Just, you know what? Let me just play it. You listen. So, Mike Gold.
Okay. Can I ask you, what is the Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies?
That's a separate division of Bigelow Aerospace, but I'm not a part of that, so can't really talk about BAS.
Speaking of the FAA, actually, in the FAA manual, it said something about UFOs.
Yeah,
Can I ask you about that?
Well, let me say that I personally find the subject matter very interesting. I think, particularly if you look at the work of Kepler and the number of exoplanets we're discovering, and the number of Earth-like exoplanets. As a matter of fact, I missed the hearing, but I should keep looking at Brian here. But we may have data on Earth-like planets already. So I think the galaxy is most likely teeming with life. As a matter of fact, that's what science is teaching us. So
can I just ask you real quick? I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I just ask you? So the FAA refers reports to Bigelow. What do you guys do with those reports?
Again, I'm not a part of that division, so
you don't know what they do with UFO reports?
I can't comment what they do.
Okay.
But I'm glad someone's taking them, I can say, because these are important issues that deserve serious attention, particularly from an airspace issue.
Okay.
So he's friendly to the UAP thing, and he's kind of framing it as, yeah, there's life in the universe. Of course, look what we're studying. We're going to get to this. And he doesn't want to comment on BAS because he's saying he's not connected to it. But it sounds like he knows more than he's letting on, right? And this would just be, 5-6 years after this incident with Lockheed Martin, right? That getting denied getting this craft back from Lockheed Martin into the possession of the U.S. government's hands. All right, I got one more clip because you see, Mike Gold again has a lot of. Sorry, he's got a lot of experience again working with NASA, right? Clearly, with space, technologies. Let's put it that way. Let me bring up this clip. This is Mike Gold. Calls for a NASA permanent UFO office in June of 2023. If you remember, there was like this big press conference that NASA put on and had created this UAP study panel, right, to look into UAPs and talk about it, right? So they had this panel, live streamed it, and he was one of the people up there. And this got so criticized in the UFO community, right? And now one of these guys is going to be testifying at the hearing. So the irony there is hilarious. But again, there's a lot more connection to him in the UFO lore, if you will, than meets the eye, right? So let's listen to what he said in June 2023 at this NASA event here.
Were there radar hits? Were there other sightings? Unless we can look at this from a holistic perspective, it's very difficult to draw conclusions. And relative to stigma, and I appreciate the reports that our colleagues gave, I think there's plenty of stigma right here in this building. And I'm sure, Dan, you've suffered from it at times. And I just want to commend Administrator, although he's always be Senator Nelson to me, for his leadership and candidly courage in getting NASA to tackle this issue. And as we look at what Sean had articulated, that what he wants NASA to do, as we look at the recommendations for reporting and how we need to collate that reporting, I'm very concerned that this could be effectively done on an ad hoc basis. And I've been a part of far too many panels and studies that end up sitting on the shelf. I don't want this to be one of those exercises. And we can discuss this further, but I would call for and recommend a permanent office within NASA to support this activity, albeit likely a modest one, but to collate this information, collate that data, to archive the information, and act as the open, forward-facing counterpart to Sean and AARO. I think then we could continue and actually accomplish the reporting, the stigma issues that have been raised, and we could do so in a relatively affordable fashion. Because again, I don't want all of our work to end up being in vain.
Well said. Well said. All right. So essentially, again, Mike Gold's testimony, if you look into it, again, released, no problem. I put it on my Twitter account, on Vetted's Twitter account. Again, it's just calling for like the destigmatization of the topic. We should be looking into it. We should be more open-minded. Let's set up study panels to study UAP. And it's like, I don't know. Look, there's a couple different ways to look at this. Yeah, that sounds great. All for it, right? But wait, I thought we already have UFOs and bodies and all kinds of them, and we shoot down craft, and you know what I'm saying? Like, why are we not talking about that? A lot of this is based on what we should do moving forward, looking at UAPs, right? And it kind of just makes me question the stories we've heard. Because why are we not focused on that? Why is nobody testifying to those stories? Right? I'll be honest, if, you know, for instance, Luis Elizondo, because I haven't heard Mike Gold really make any claims. So, right. So it's a little different for him. But for someone like Luis Elizondo, for instance, why isn't he going to testify that he was told by Hal Puthoff that Roswell's real? We have body, all of these things. Like, why do you think it's real? What have you seen? What is the thing? And maybe he will, right? We won't know until he testifies. But I just find it a little interesting. Again, I'm all for what we should be doing moving forward to study UAPs and removing the stigma. But you want to know what would help all of this? You want to know what would help Congress invest money into studying UAPs? And you want to know what would help remove the stigma? You ready? You ready? Can you guess what I'm about to say? What do you think would help those two things? Literally the goal they're trying to get in here. All the harassment that people are getting, the whistleblowers, what would help? Yeah, proof. How about the craft, the bodies, actually releasing some videos, photos, something that will literally wash away every concern they have. Congress would immediately want to put funding into this. There would be no question to be studying UAP. The stigma would be immediately gone, right? Threats, harassment, gone. But they don't do that. It's almost like they want to keep perpetuating the same thing to keep going or something. I don't know. I'm just asking questions. But I just find that interesting. Like you claim to have the thing that would literally solve your problems, yet you don't want to talk about any of that. So for me, it will be very interesting if this Lockheed Martin story, which I'm going to get into more here, doesn't get brought up. All right. Now let's go back to this Lockheed Martin story. And who better to tell us than David Grush? My man, David Grush, y'all. Big fan of David Grush. Now, let's let him tell the story of Harry Reid, this craft. He's not going to, you know what? Let me just play the clip and we'll get to more. I've got a clip of Jeremy Corbell talking about it as well with George Knapp. Let's get into it, y'all.
And I met with Senator Harry Reid about 9 months before he died. And of course, he's a private citizen now. And I wanted to brief him on the topic. And I wanted to get his kind of thought leadership on it. Because, he was a Gang of Eight member, right? Which is the top most cleared senators and congressmen. He was the majority leader, for God's sakes, of the Senate. And I knew, he helped sponsor the OSAP program that I mentioned, and where they looked at Skinwalker Ranch and some other things. And I wanted to understand, like, what does Harry Reid actually know? Like, why did he, give $21 million to DIA and Bigelow Aerospace for this? So I'm sitting there in Harry Reid's living room, right next to him with some other witnesses that were there with me. And he straight up says, he's like, yeah, I knew we had UFO material. I was denied access for decades. I tried to get access, and then he explained some of his efforts during OSAP. And I was like, holy shit, did the former majority leader just say, did he just confirm this to me as well? You know, I was already talking to these amazing high level people, but I have Harry Reid literally saying, yes, we have material, and, you know, he knew it was non-human.
Did Harry Reid have personal experience with this?
I don't know if he's had any personal stuff in his personal life.
I mean, did he see it?
He said,
witness?
in terms of seeing the material himself, he said he was denied access for years, decades was his term. And he actually told me on behalf of me, he was going, so he had like a weekly call with President Joe Biden at the time. And he straight up said to me, he was going to talk to President Biden about this issue, literally. And then what he was telling me about OSAP, I was like, holy shit, I have like 20 other people that told me this, dude. So the real history, what fucking OSAP was, because I think there's a lot of people out there that think they were looking at ghosts, Skinwalker Ranch. Yes, they went to the ranch as a secondary and tertiary objective. But the real reason, so like there's a document that came out a couple years ago through FOIA from the Defense Intelligence Agency. There was this special access program request that Harry Reid, you might have seen this, I think like George Knapp and company have reported on this, that he sent to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, William Lynn. And it was asking for one of the most serious SAPs you can ask for, what they call a bigoted, waived special access program. So waived means it's limited congressional reporting. That is a class of special access programs. And bigoted means it's like by name. And it's like, it was like, you can read the FOIA document. It was like, you know, Harry Reid, James Inhofe, Lou Elizondo, etc. And I'm like, why are you asking for the most serious SAP to be created for a program that ostensibly is looking at Skinwalker Ranch and stuff? And it doesn't make any sense. So what really happened there, and you know, Harry Reid, God bless his soul, made this disclosure a couple weeks after we met in the New Yorker, and you can look this up. I think it was like a May 2021 New Yorker story where he says, I knew for decades, and he made this disclosure, not me. So I'm going to say the name of the contractor. Harry Reid said this. You know, we knew that Lockheed Martin had this material for decades. I tried to get access and I was denied. And specifically with the Lockheed Martin stuff, he was talking about during the OSAP program. And for the people who are on this program, I submitted this shit to the officer, got this cleared. So don't freak out, but I'm telling the truth here. So Lockheed Martin wanted to divest itself from this material at a specific facility that's known to me, that I provided to the Inspector General, like street address, all that shit, right? And the idea was, if they made a catcher's mitt, a security catcher's mitt for this shit, at, you know, most serious SAP possible, the contractor and the other government customer, which was the Central Intelligence Agency, for that specific Lockheed material. And it was shit that they recovered from like the 50s and stuff. And it was like bits and pieces of like hull structure, shit like that. And so they were going to tech transfer it. And the $21 or $22 million was actually for Bigelow Aerospace to build out, you know, facilities in Las Vegas and material analysis equipment. And I saw the staff meeting slides. I saw the paperwork. Like there's a paperwork trail I've seen on this shit. And I talked to the people involved in this program. And, you know, even Jim Lakatsky, who ran the program, who's a retired DIA officer, PhD in engineering, even made this disclosure in his book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon.
I've got more information on that, so stick with me, right? And just to recap, right, we're going to continue the clip here. Right, David Grush is just saying everything I said before, right, earlier, right, about that. And clearly I didn't just come up with it. This is all just from stuff I looked up. But David Grush saying this, right? Lockheed Martin had a craft for decades that they were withholding, right? From what crash? Is it a crash that we're aware of? And OSAP was set up to get this craft back, and they were being denied. And even Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid was being denied and wanted to talk to President Biden about this. Did that happen? There's been no confirmation that, current President Biden, was told about this, right? It's just very interesting. All right. So again, I've got more clips. about this, but let's continue here with David Grush.
Page 152 to 153. And he also made a disclosure a couple weeks ago. I think it was on Weaponized podcast with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, where he's like, yeah, we had a whole craft and we broke into the hull and we gained access. And he ran that through the same, security process as I did. And so Jim Lakatsky, who ran this program, is also going on the record that he is aware, personally aware of intact vehicles and everything. But
so they gained access.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? And by what method did they gain access?
The way he wrote it in his book, I can only infer it sounded forcible. So through some kind of, means, I don't know if it was like CO2 laser or something. I don't actually know how they gained access, but imagine it was not permissive access. They like broke into the damn thing.
The exact thing that James Lakatsky said is they breached the hull, right? And that this craft inside was the size of a football field, which later David Grush also brought up in a presentation earlier this year, private presentation that kind of leaked out. Is it the same craft? I think so. There's no real way to know, right? It's very confusing. But the fact that they had gotten into this craft, and maybe that's why Lockheed Martin didn't want to give it up, right? Because in my opinion, you don't give up something you haven't figured out yet. You might give it up if you figured it out, right? If you reverse engineered it, then you don't need it anymore, maybe. But why would you give it up if you haven't cracked the code? You would never give it up. All right. So therein lies the problem with OSAP, this craft. And again, Mike Gold being with Bigelow during this time, right? And now he's testifying. Did he know about this? And if he did, is he going to talk about this at the hearing? Why wouldn't you? Right? Is it because there's no real proof to show any of this? Like it's just on the cusp. Not sure. Let's continue.
So this thing is essentially sealed, and it's some sort of what was the shape of this thing?
Lakatsky didn't disclose the shape on this particular vehicle, as far as I
what
recollect.
about the dimensions?
I don't believe he did in his book. But I think it's like chapter 11 in his new book or something. I glanced at it, but he did make that disclosure on video as well. And I do encourage both the Aero Office, which is the DoD's UAP task force successor, and Congress to ask Dr. James Lakatsky to come in for classified testimony, because the disclosure in his one book that he wrote with Colin Kelleher, George Knapp, and in the second book, well, the guy saying he has close personal knowledge, he needs to go to Congress. So I don't know James Lakatsky, but I do encourage him to be a fact witness. But going back to that transfer with Lockheed, long story short, can't get into all the nuanced details, but basically the CIA said fuck you to DIA and Lockheed, and it was totally killed. So Harry Reid's request to get the material transferred to the OSAP program was totally killed because of bureaucracy and kind of fiefdom stuff. So they used that money, and then they wrote those defense intelligence reference documents, the DIRDs, as a lot of people who's familiar with it listening will know about. And then they did look at Skinwalker Ranch because they thought that studying kind of the more woo-woo phenomenon aspects of this, and I've never been to the ranch, so I've never experienced the ranch for myself, but obviously I think we both know a bunch of people that have been to the ranch and have seen some trippy stuff, or at least allege that. They thought that they would be able to gain currency with the program, and in this case CIA, to unlock the key for the Lockheed Martin stuff, which actually, I'll tell you right now, it's like so weird to say that, but I ran that shit through security. To me, it's like an out-of-body experience to talk about that kind of detailed sensitivity, stuff like that. But basically they studied the ranch to gain favor, to be like, hey, look at all this stuff we're figuring out, this paranormal stuff that's somehow connected to the phenomenon on the ranch. But ultimately they never gained favor with the government customer. And then the program kind of died a slow death because of a lot of politics in the Pentagon. So that's kind of the long but short of it with the OSAP program that, I wanted to make sure the public knew it's not what you think it was. There was some other stuff behind the scenes that, I wanted to speak truth to power on.
So there you go. So basically, David Grush is just trying to explain what exactly the true intention of the OSAP program was, right? And if you notice, he never makes any mention of ATIP, which is interesting. But that it wasn't to study Ghost at Skinwalker Ranch, right? This is what he's alleging, right? They did do that, but only because their initial goal to get this craft back from Lockheed Martin was shut down. And they couldn't get it. They couldn't get it back in the hands of the U.S. government. Right. All right. So don't worry, y'all. I got some more clips. So he's talking about James Lukatsky. He's saying, I hope he testifies to this, right? Because of what he's saying. He should testify, right? Well, James Lukatsky was asked if he would testify. And let's hear his response. What do you think? You think James Lukatsky said he would testify? Some of y'all already know the answer. So here he is with Robert Fleischer, is his name, on exomagazine.tv. With Colm Kelleher. James Lukatsky is in the middle there. Robert Fleischer to the left.
There are some hearings planned. There will be more hearings. Dr. Lukatsky, could you imagine, or you, Dr. Kelleher, could you imagine going there to testify before Congress? Because both of you obviously seem to know much more than what you're allowed to say in the book, also regarding potential crash recovery projects going on.
I personally would not be in favor of testifying because I believe that the agreements that I signed, the non-disclosure agreements that I signed, both at the corporate level and at the government level, preclude me from doing that. And there's been a lot of talk in DC and the Congress with respect to the congressional hearings that quote unquote protections are being offered. The fact is that if you violate a non-disclosure agreement, you are at the mercy of the consequences of violating those agreements, regardless of all of the talk regarding protection of whistleblowers. The next congressional hearing is scheduled currently for November 13th. It is being chaired by Nancy Mace, and there will be Congressman Tim Burchett and Congressman Anna Paulina Luna, and the usual cast of characters will be there. There are rumors and innuendo flying around Washington, D.C. right now regarding which whistleblowers will step up. But I personally don't believe that it is appropriate for me to go and testify under those circumstances.
How about you, Dr. Lukatsky?
I completely agree with what Colm says. For me, it would have to be in a compartment. Kona Blue would have to be reactivated by DHS. I would have to have, remember, I retired in 2016. I would have to have my SCI, top secret SCI clearance reinstated. I would need all these things to occur. As for open testimony, the answer is no. And that's what surprises me, because to say it more particularly what Colm has said, when you get a clearance from these organizations, DIA adjudicates TSSCI here for DOD employees. CIA adjudicates their clearances. Congress can say what they want and they can provide what protections they want. But if you work for those organizations, you're going to be very leery of crossing them, because all of a sudden, while they may not pull your clearances, they may limit what compartments you could be in. So it's very risky for these people to say that they're going into open testimony. And I don't see how they're saying if they have anything legitimate to say. I mean, we do, but I just listed out the qualifications I would need, and that would be very time consuming. And and we also have to remember, both of us, as Colin mentioned, his industrial agreements. If there's proprietary information that's in, you can't mention that at all, regardless of what clearance or compartment you're in or skiff you're testifying in. That's proprietary information. So I don't see how this is all going to work out. And so my answer would be no. I would not go unless an awful lot happened.
There you go. And by the way, we have a German vetted channel now. So if you want, go check that out. The link is in the description. Boom. Apparently the stream cut out for a little bit, but it came back. I didn't do anything. So not sure what happened there, but interesting. I'm just asking questions about the hearing and these guys, and next thing you know, they're trying to shut it down. So if you want to know where the real suppression is, y'all, it's here. It's people like me who ask questions about this. They just immediately don't want us doing that because they just want you to support them no matter what. So someone clearly tried to get this stream copyrighted, and somehow we're back. And they're trying to report my channel currently and trying to get me shut down as we speak, as I'm talking to you. People are reporting the channel, trying to get me shut down. I can see messages coming in through my YouTube. Very interesting, right? Very interesting. But we're going to continue. We're back. YouTube's helping me out, not letting them do it. All right, let's Patrick, the feed got cut. Yeah, I saw that, but we're back. All right, let's see here. Is the feed still on, y'all? Just give me a yes in the chat if you can still see the feed. Everything's fine. Okay, cool. Thank you, Miss Brookers. Should be allowed to ask questions, y'all. All right, I've got one more clip here. Bear with me. Where is it? Okay, right here. You know what? Let's read Jeremy's post here. So Jeremy Corbell put out this post. When was this? October 27th. He said, imagine this extraordinary belief, likely fact. Lockheed Martin tried to do the right thing for the United States of America, to transfer a UFO, an actual whole physical non-human intelligence NHI designed and built, possibly interstellar space/time travel capable craft that they had in their possession at the time, likely still do. So if there's any question of if this was like a piece of something, no, they're saying they have the entire craft. So there should be no ambiguity as to what, this thing is, right? Like street address is known by folks such as David Grush, as said on the Joe Rogan podcast, but many, many, many other American journalists and specific American citizens who are true patriots and have constitutional understanding and federal lawyers who are fully informed. This was attempted to be facilitated in 2007 to 2008 by the vice president of Lockheed Martin at the time, likely a true American patriot who I have not had the pleasure of meeting personally, but I hope to be able to. And that transfer to the Defense Intelligence Agency was an attempt to bring back this craft into the legal and constitutional site of the United States of America. I don't think that's meant to be overnight. However, this material transfer was inhibited by, at the time, head director of science and technology for the CIA. That person has been named as Glenn Gaffney. We'll get to more of that in a moment. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. What do you do after that is up to you, right? But if you watch this clip, you will understand George, mother effing Knapp, and I've been telling you this for years. And so it was one of the people who fought for that transfer from within the DIA named James Jim Lakatsky, former head of the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program, AWSAP. And he told you a little bit about it on an episode of Weaponized. The only time that he testified to that on camera and on the record that is public is currently aware of. Well, I wouldn't say testified. Yeah, being on a podcast is not testimony. You can lie on podcast. Just saying. But this is a cool clip. Shout out to Jeremy and George for putting this together.
I think it is entirely feasible that this UFO cover-up exists within a private company.
Lockheed Martin.
Or Lockheed.
Lockheed was one of those involved.
Lockheed wanted to divest their NHI, non-human intelligence, UAP or UFO materials, a material transfer of UAP that was supposed to happen to OSAP from Lockheed, and that was shut down specifically by CIA-involved individuals. And there's an individual who was head of science and technology at that time. This craft had a streamlined configuration suitable for aerodynamic flight, but no intakes, no exhaust, no wings or control surfaces. In fact, it appeared not to have an engine, fuel tanks, or fuel. So what they were hoping to get to study from Lockheed, do you know?
Yeah. Yes. There is non-human technology, something from somewhere else, whether it's ET or interdimensional, something that we did not make, that crashed, that we've been analyzing, that's been stashed in presumably special access programs, controlled by defense contractors, presumably funded secretly by the public. Not even members of Congress get to see.
It was Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Sixth Man to Walk on the Moon, a guy that I filmed a bunch with. When he died, this memo was in his archive. It wasn't something the public was supposed to see. But additionally, when this got out, it shows this guy Wilson, Admiral Wilson, who I believe was the J2 at the time. The J2 has oversight over all the black budget SAPs. And he was furious that he didn't have access to one of them, let's say, I don't know, at Lockheed. Whose job is it to not let people know the fundamental nature of reality that we live in? As we've always suspected, the CIA has a lot of communication and oversight and kind of their hands in a lot of these retrieval programs.
Let's say Marco Rubio convinces the Pentagon or Lockheed Martin, let me into the hangar, let me see the craft. Oh, there's the bodies. He gets to see that with his own eyes and then goes back and what? Can he say it?
You've got a guy who did the investigation, provided that to the inspector general, and said, here is the street address of where this UFO material is being held. Can we assume that this craft that Dr. Lakatsky has direct firsthand knowledge of is exactly what Lockheed has?
You're telling us, you told us, because you were allowed to tell us, that our government has a UFO in its possession and has been able to access the inside of it, right?
Yes.
Well,
It's delicate. It's
why is it delicate?
They're enemies. And our enemies, you can be sure they're listening to this show right now.
I don't think anybody involved with the cover-up should face any.
Real quick, shout out to Jeremy for really pressing James in that interview. I have to admit, he really did press him, really get him to say some stuff. And yes, it's just on a podcast, but still, it was worthwhile. Okay. So again, yeah, shout out to Jeremy for really pressing James Lakatsky. And I'm sure he's being pressed behind the scenes to testify, right? Because the fact that James Lakatsky doesn't want to testify, but will write it in a book and say it on a podcast is concerning. Come in front of the American people and say that. What's the difference? If you're going to say it publicly, what is the difference, right? Is it that you don't want to go under oath and say it? I don't know.
prison time. Let's move on.
I'm with you on that up to a point. There are lines that should not be crossed.
Like what?
If you threaten to kill somebody, or if you actually do silence them through violence.
Got you. Agreed. Agreed.
Right. So they're saying there at the end, like, and please go check out Weaponized Podcast, Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp. They are saying that, which is another conversation entirely, right? That people involved in this cover up shouldn't be, you know, held responsible, right? We should just let's pardon everybody, right? And George Knapp's pushing back a little bit, which I agree with. All right. There are some certain lines that if they got crossed, sorry, we can't let that go. Right? We can't let that go. If lives have been taken, people are going to have to answer for that. Could that hold up disclosure from, you know, what the government is hiding? I guess, probably to some extent. But we also can't, again, if we lose our humanity, what are we fighting for? We can't lose our humanity and fight for disclosure for humanity. Right? Does that make sense? Because the idea about learning about this craft or crafts and NHI that's potentially visiting planet Earth and, you know, what kind of impact that would have on humanity, right? The knowledge that confirmation that we're not alone. We think that a lot of people think we're not alone, right? But to have actual confirmation would be substantial, right? And, well, we can't just lose ourselves along the way to get there, in my opinion. So anyway, all right. It looks like they did their job, as I lost a couple hundred viewers from that feed breaking out, which is what they wanted. Whoever watching this that doesn't like what I'm saying, which is, I don't know, what am I saying that's so wrong? Right. Very interesting to me, if you ask me. Very interesting. Again, they're trying to suppress this truth, right? You think it's the government that shut down the live stream? No. Could it be as simple as a copyright issue? Maybe. Could there be more? Yeah. In my opinion, there is. Because the last time I've been copy struck on here, I know who did it behind the scenes, right? Who tried to copyright strike this channel and end my channel a couple months ago. Tried to actually end my channel, and I won all the copyright strikes. Because at the end of the day, this is legal to do. So look, let's remove this. All right, let's get to an interesting. All right, you know what? Hang on. We've got an interesting clip from, where is it? Oh, here we go. All right. This is from Tim Burchett talking about the upcoming hearing. So I think we've gone over this Lockheed Martin thing quite enough, right? We've figured that out. That's interesting. Will Michael bring that up? I don't know, right? But let's hope so. And there's no clear indication that he was involved, but he was at Bigelow during this time. But there's no indication other than complete speculation, right? But who would have been best to testify about the Lockheed Martin craft that we supposedly tried to get back? Well, James Lukatsky, that's what he's claiming. It would have been real nice to have him testify about that. And it sounds like David Grush was willing to share that information in a skiff, and he may have, right? But it would be nice to come back to it. All right, so this is Tim Burchett on News Nation talking about this hearing and sort of what to expect, right?
Joining us now to give his insights is Republican Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee. He introduced the UAP Transparency Act. You will be at this hearing. I appreciate you taking the time tonight.
Thank you, ma'am.
I want to start with what you expect to hear this Wednesday. Do you think that Americans will learn new information about UAPs, or are you expecting massive revelations on Wednesday?
I think we're going to learn some things. It's peeling back the layers of an onion. The one thing I think that will happen eventually is President will move towards total disclosure. And that's what's going to have to happen, because it's just going to be some person's word against another. And, you know, we have these government bureaucrats who keep saying that they don't exist, or as you quoted the one just then, saying that we misinterpret. Well, they're misinterpreting then, because their own people are saying we don't know what the heck these things are. And the best pilots in the world that are our pilots are telling us these things are flying in close proximity to their aircraft. I had one tell me this thing flew 14 feet away from my canopy, and he held up his hand like that as it is to mimic where it was. So, and then we have these bureaucrats arrogantly tell us that we don't know what we're talking about, and then when we ask them about specific instances like the one you're showing right there, they look down at their papers and say, we have no information on that. So it's a completely compartmentalized, arrogant bunch, and I'm hoping President Trump fires a lot of people and puts some people in there that trust the American public with the truth.
Yeah, you are hoping he fires some people. I appreciate you mentioning that. I do want to ask, President-elect Trump has said in the past that he knows things about UFOs. What are you expecting? What will you be watching from him? Are you expecting full transparency under his new presidency?
I hope so. That's the signals I've been given. And in my conversations with the president-elect, I'm convinced that that's what he wants, and that he trusts the American public. You know, it's just like the Kennedy files. They tried to set up Schumer tried to set up this thing, and everybody embraced it, and they trashed me because I said it's not going to work, because it mimics the Kennedy files, which happened before I was born. I'm 60 years old, and yet we still don't know what happened there. Those files are still closed, and the people associated with it are dead. So we've got a lot of things to get to. I don't know that this will prove too much, other than that there's more out there and that we're not telling the truth. The Admiral that will testify, he has some very compelling evidence that he wants to talk about. And there's no reason in the world for a man like that to lie, because if he, all he's going to do is be ridiculed in the public and by his former peers. So this is completely, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they face ridicule. And to your point, it is, these whistleblowers are at risk. They receive threats for coming forward. I do want to ask you, Congressman, I know you introduced the UAP Transparency Act. You've been championing this for some time. We find ourselves in this moment. Many perceive political upheaval in our country. We are facing foreign wars that need to be solved. People still feeling the pinch of the economy and inflation at home, the border. Why does this in particular matter to you so much?
Well, it's in the purview of the committee. We don't deal with a lot of those other things in oversight. We oversee government and cover-ups. And why in the world would we not want to know what we're spending tens of millions of dollars on? The federal government tells us they don't exist in one breath, but then they won't release files. And when they do, they're redacted heavily because they think we're ignorant and they're arrogant. It says everything to do with Washington. It's power, influence, overconfidence, and arrogance, and money, of course, is all wrapped up into this. And if we had an hour, I could probably just scratch the surface. But I'm hoping we'll get to the bottom of this. Chairman Mace is going to be an excellent chairwoman, and she will, I believe, she will not put up with any garbage. And I'm looking forward to the committee.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find.
Well said, Tim. Well said. I agree. Nancy Mace is going to bring it. I really think that. And look, I do have confidence in some of these Congress members, like not putting up with any BS. And if they feel that these witnesses are giving them BS, they're going to push back and push back hard. Eventually, the rubber meets the road. You can only tell stories for so long, right? Before there's just going to have to be something. And Nancy Mace has said she wants to see military witnesses who have seen some shit, right? She agrees with us. Pardon my language, right? Like the fact that we want people that have seen some stuff, right? And all of the witnesses have never seen anything. At least that's not what their testimony says. Not one written testimony of those four witnesses, right? of these witnesses is testifying that they have firsthand knowledge, right? Tim Gallaudet has confirmation of UAP from an email and the Go Fast video and that, but there's no, I saw a craft, right? Now, of all the people on there, Lou has written in his book about other things that aren't going to be included. But there's no firsthand witness testimony in any of this. So yeah, that's a little disconcerting, because if David Grush testified at the last hearing and basically gave a treasure map with an X on it, what more is there? Everything should be based around that. Let's go get that craft. Let's go show up. Take the hearing on the road. Let's live stream that. You know what I mean? Let's get it in front of these, like, let's go. I don't know. Like, how is this going to benefit? I think the goal, has become with these hearings is to just remove the stigma around the topic and study UFOs more. And that's great and all. But man, a lot of people are going to be disappointed by that. Because we want that basic soft disclosure, we're not alone, but proof of it, right? And for the government to admit it. So I don't know. I think a lot of it's just based on what you want out of this, right? Your own expectations, which you should make up your own mind. Don't let me, anyone else tell you about this. If you're super excited about this hearing and you're looking forward to hearing from these witnesses, I support you 1,000%. Right? I get it. If you're completely disappointed by the witness list and wish it was something else and, whatever, I support that too. I get it. It's all about your own wants and needs out of this and the expectations that you have for this. So, all right, let's get into one last thing, which I've been saving. And some of you have already checked out, but we still got a lot of people here. So let's keep going. You know what? Let's break it up here with something kind of fun that I have. A real quick fun video that I found interesting. And then we'll jump into a Liberation Time story with Chris Sharp that is fascinating. But first, let's just play something fun. This is super interesting, right? Now, I'm just going to play it and then we'll talk about it.
This is locking. Look at this. Ready? So look at this thing as it hovers back and forth. It's not a magnet, but as soon as it gets to be 320 degrees below zero, it turns into its own levitating, almost hovercraft. The really cool thing is watch it lock in place like this. So when it locks in, watch this, lock it in. You can actually feel it as it locks. See how it locks in place? This is locking. Look at this. Ready?
Now, I do not understand how any of that works, but that's interesting. Temperatures, UFOs, what are the connections, right? There's a lot more to say with that, but it's kind of a fun video, but there's a lot more to explore there. So I'm just going to drop that hint for you. All right, let's move on. Because this article dropped recently and over the weekend, and some might say it's astonishing, right? Let's read the title. CIA and DOD engaged in decades-long retrieval, tracking, and exploitation of UFOs, including Italian Magenta craft, sources reveal. Let's do this. Can we get this like that? How does that look? Is that better? I think. Okay, that'll work. Written by Chris Sharp, 10 November 2024. With the potentially explosive unidentified anomalous phenomena hearing set to take place in the House of Representatives next week, sources connected with the intelligence community and Department of Defense, DoD, have disclosed new and controversial details to Liberation Times. These sources allege that retrieval missions and covert legacy operations stretching back as far as World War II were reportedly conducted by the CIA in collaboration with key elements of the U.S. defense establishment. The sources, who spoke under strict conditions of anonymity, describe a shadowy history of missions dedicated to recovering exotic materials of non-human origin under the utmost secrecy. The revelations are expected to add weight to an already intense debate over U.S. government transparency regarding UAP, as officials and the public grapple with the implications of alleged long-standing retrieval missions. All right, now bear with me. This is well worth getting through, I promise. Liberation Times spoke with sources who stated that retrieval missions involving materials of non-human origin are hidden within legitimate retrieval programs. All right, let me read that again. Hidden within legitimate retrieval programs, because you see, the American government, I'm only going to speak about America here, we have crash retrieval programs, right, to go get foreign technology, whether it be Russia, China, whatever, right, or our own stuff that falls behind enemy lines, we go and get it, right, and it's a lot of different stuff. So we already have those programs. So what he's implying here is that hidden within those are these other programs, right, for NHI craft, right? Non-human aliens craft, UFOs. That's what we're talking about. Liberation Times has previously reported details of alleged undersea UAP retrieval missions. Among those allegedly involved are the maritime branch of the CIA's Directorate of Operations, the U.S. Navy, the National Underwater Reconnaissance Office, jointly operated by the Navy and CIA, and the United States Special Operations Command. Now get ready for a lot of acronyms, y'all. So just prepare yourself. And it's going to be a lot to kind of keep in check, but I'll try to summarize as we go here. It is further understood that the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, I just butchered that, but let's move on. Institution has provided deep submergence vehicles to support these retrieval efforts. Once recovered from undersea, these craft are allegedly transferred, to the Office of Naval Research. From there, they are handed over to defense contractors for detailed analysis. And this may be how the Lockheed Martin craft happened, right? They get it, they're going to do some analysis, and then they're like, we're not giving it up. But can they do that, right? If they're part of the chain that this goes to, it seems like this would be, because they say defense contractors, meaning more than one, meaning that this relationship has been happening a long time. As you see, we go through this article, we'll break this down, right? Because this article and what we're going to get into is the origin of how these programs started, right, in the early 1900s to where we are today, right? And how the cloak of secrecy was applied and maintained for decades, right? An intelligence community source informed Liberation Times that UAP missions on foreign soil have not typically involved the CIA's Office of Global Access, now known as the Transnational Technology Mission Center. These operations generally fall outside its primary scope. However, the source explained that joint efforts between the U.S. and allied governments have sometimes led to collaborative recoveries, such as the reported incident in Varginha, Brazil, which James Fox made a great movie about, Moment of Contact. I highly recommend that documentary. It's phenomenal. The Varginha case, often dubbed Brazil's Roswell, revolves around reports of UAP debris, along with multiple accounts of sightings of non-human entities. In 1996, eyewitnesses described both local authorities and what appeared to be U.S. personnel on site, securing materials and conducting operations. This event has since sparked widespread speculation about international collaboration in UAP retrieval missions. Another source revealed to Liberation Times that following the collapse of the Soviet Union, the U.S. and Russia cooperated on at least one undersea mission to retrieve a craft of alleged non-human origin that had crashed in Russian waters. The source also told Liberation Times about the process of transferring materials to defense contractors. Pay attention here, y'all. Pay attention. Stay with me. In terms of materials recovered, I know of one occasion whereby a designated individual within the CIA's Directorate of Operations collaborated with other agencies to decide which contractor to engage for analysis and exploitation. Right? Such a decision depends on the circumstances. All right, pay attention here. For instance, if the object is submerged and capable of undersea propulsion, it would be prudent to perhaps involve General Dynamics. However, if it crashed into the sea from beyond Earth's orbit, other contractors would be considered. Lockheed? The source added that until recently, U.S. and Chinese intelligence agencies had also been tracking UAP and exchanging data. Liberation Times has been informed that reverse engineering efforts primarily fall under the DoD scope. Meanwhile, the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology is understood to safeguard adapted technology derived from UAP research conducted by the DoD and its contractors, right? So they're basically saying reverse engineered, right? Safeguard adapted technology derived from, that's just reverse engineering this technology, right? Conducted by the DoD and its contractors, right? So it's starting to sound like, if the Lockheed Martin story is true, that Lockheed Martin sort of stepped out of what the normal standard procedure was, right? Is it the first time that a defense contractor has gone against this? Was it the first time Lockheed Martin was involved? Was there time up with this craft that they had, and it was time to give it back? And, you know, whatever, they had it for decades, right? Trying to get access to this thing, right? It's very interesting. Again, if there's this whole chain of how this works, Lockheed Martin sort of stepping out of that is interesting, if that's the case. Pardon me. A lot of reading. Here we go. The source further clarified the division of responsibilities. The DoD focuses on analyzing the craft's structure and design, while the Department of Energy specializes in studying its propulsion systems. The source added that the CI's Weapons and Counterproliferation Mission Center, WCPMMC, and wider intelligence community's primary role in UAP research involves studying the phenomena, assessing potential non-human origins, categorizing the types of intelligence that may control them, and investigating their intentions. As previously reported, according to sources, former CIA Director of Science and Technology Glenn Gaffney, if you remember, I brought that name up before, allegedly blocked an attempt to transfer alleged non-human materials from Lockheed Martin, right? The same story we've been talking about, right? So this guy right here is potentially the one that blocked that, right? Who said, nope, right? Because I looked up the vice president of Lockheed Martin, this woman at that time, right? Possibly working with OSAP, I'm sure, Bigelow, potentially Mike Gold as well, all trying to make this transfer happen. And basically, Gaffney steps in and goes, nope, shutting this down, which is interesting. Why does he wants Lockheed Martin to keep it, or he doesn't want it back in the possession of the U.S., right? Is it basically that, yeah, we got a system here, and actually what's happening is OSAP and the people around it are the ones breaking into this system, right? They're the ones trying to disrupt this cover-up that they've had going for decades, right? This whole system working with multiple departments across the government to cover up the crash retrieval and reverse engineering and study of these NHI craft, right? And so OSAP coming in and going, this, that, the other, let's create a program, we'll get it back. That's what the disruption was, which is interesting, right? That's interesting because, you know, we often talk about in this field, it's probably Department of Energy, it's probably NSA, it's probably CIA, it's probably FBI, it's probably the, you know, yada, 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 JSOC. And the truth is, there's a lot of people involved and a lot of programs and a lot of departments involved, which makes sense, But it also, you would have to ask the question, wow, that's a lot of people involved now. You know, why hasn't more come forward about this? I mean, we're talking thousands upon tens of thousands of people across decades who have done a good job keeping this a secret, if that's the case. The alleged materials, okay, going back to Lockheed Martin, the alleged materials are believed to have been recovered since the 1950s. That's interesting. So this craft is since the 1950s, the one that Lockheed Martin has. Right. Liberation Times understands that due to recruitment challenges in engineering, James Ryder, vice president of Lockheed Martin Space Systems at the time, proposed transferring these materials to an external organization to drive new breakthroughs. Liberation Times also understands from sources that one of Gaffney's successors within the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology rebuffed engagement efforts from the now disbanded UAP task force, which is what David Grush, Jay Stratton, all these guys were a part of, right? That's interesting. This is getting interesting. All right, we're not going to go through all that. According to multiple sources, the CIA's WCPM-MC has allegedly played a key role in UAP missions and has historically provided analytical expertise on exotic, non-human materials. While it does not particularly participate in the operational component of current retrieval and reverse engineering efforts coordinated by the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology and Directorate of Operations, it remains an integral source of intelligence. Sources tell Liberation Times that the WCPM-MC receives space-based technical intelligence from National Reconnaissance Office assets, which David Grush also worked for, along with technical analysis from DoD combat support agencies such as the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, which is what James Lukatsky was working for, right? The National Security Agency, the NSA, and National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the NGA. I think David Grush worked for that too. This includes signals intelligence, measurement and signature intelligence, and geospatial intelligence. Does this have something to do with Immaculate Constellation to some extent, right? This parent program. The sources also tell Liberation Times that the WCPM-MC collects and analyzes UAP data from all domains, including aerospace, space, and undersea domains. Of note, the CIA's current chief operating officer, Mara Burns, who manages the CIA on a day-to-day basis, previously served as assistant director of WCPM-MC before earning a promotion in 2021. Okay. A source connected with the intelligence community told Liberation Times that the WCPM-MC served as the CIA's primary liaison to the UAPTF. Interesting. Understanding the CIA's Weapons and Counterproliferation Mission Center and its origins sheds light on the agency's and its predecessors' involvement in UAP research dating back to the 1940s. So basically, right, the way that this started, right? So we're almost done. Let's just knock this out. How we doing, y'all? We doing okay? Stay with me here. All right. 1947. The origins of WCPM-MC can be traced back to the creation of the Scientific Intelligence Branch within the Office of Reports and Estimates, the ORE, known as the CIA's first Center for Intelligence Analysis. What happened in 1947? Roswell. Isn't that the year of Roswell? Pretty sure it is. 1949. The Scientific Intelligence Branch merged with the Nuclear Energy Group from the Office of Special Operations, forming the Office of Scientific Intelligence, OSI. There are records which verify that OSI took an interest in unconventional scientific phenomena, including UAP, which were perceived as potential national security threats during the Cold War. This interest led to the study of unexplained sightings to assess any foreign or technological origin that might impact U.S. defense. 1980, the OSI evolved into the Office of Scientific and Weapons Research, OSWR. 2001, OSWR was restructured and became the Office of Weapons Intelligence, Nonproliferation, and Arms Control, WINPAC. 2015, As part of a major CIA reorganization, WinPAC was restructured and renamed as the WCP, Weapons and Counter Proliferation Mission Center. So there you have it. And honestly, it's a great government tactic as well to just change names and do this and do that. And it just makes it really hard to trace a paper trail, right? Essentially. Liberation Times understands the CIA's interest in alleged non-human materials dates back to World War II and its predecessor, the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS. 3 separate sources have independently told Liberation Times that a mission to expedite the surrender of Italy, that's interesting, led by its director, William Donovan, and known as the McGregor Project, possessed intelligence about a non-human craft that crashed in Magenta, northern Italy in 1933. According to a microfilm roll preserved by Donovan, the McGregor Project was transferred to Research and Development Branch on June 21st, 1944. The communication seen below indicates that Charles S. Cheston, assistant director of the OSS, informed the chief of a research and development branch that the McGregor Project was transferred to his branch in June 1944. According to a source, the study of the recovered Magenta craft became closely integrated with Manhattan Project activities, right? So they're saying that this craft crashed in 1933 in Magenta, Italy, which is a satellite town just outside of Milan. And this later turned into our program, right? We get this craft back. We start developing, studying this alongside the Manhattan Project, right? Or was this part of the Manhattan Project secretly, which is interesting. The source told Liberation Times that starting in 1946, so basically that this started before Roswell, right? And it all began with this Magenta craft for the American government. This long decades cover up, everything begins with that craft in Italy, right? So look that up, do some research. There's a lot out there on it. We'll get into a little bit here. But yeah, the source told Liberation Times that starting in 1946, the Atomic Energy Commission, AEC, worked with Italian and German scientists at Wright Field to reverse engineer the Magenta craft, carrying forward research that had initially commenced between Germany and Italy. The source explained that the Central Intelligence Group, the CIG, the U.S. government agency that succeeded the OSS and preceded the CIA, right, before the CIA, later inherited the study of the Magenta craft when the Foreign Intelligence Branch was transferred from the Manhattan Project to the CIG, right? So they're saying it then split off and now it's in, with the CIG, right? Which is before the CIA. And then that becomes the CIA, right? So they end up running all of this, essentially. Liberation Times understands that the transferred element from the Manhattan Project was initially established within the CIG's Office of Special Operations before being incorporated into its nuclear energy group, right? Subsequently, within the CIA, the Scientific Intelligence Branch merged with this nuclear energy group, forming the Office of Scientific Intelligence, OSI, the precursor to today's WCPMMC, right? So basically what they're saying is the program started to do this cover up and study it and whatever, and cover up just for national security purposes, I think at this time, right, is what they're sort of implying, then becomes the same programs that are still running, this UAP cover up and crash retrieval to this day. The alleged implication: the CIA's WCPMMC traces its lineage directly to the Magenta craft, positioning it at the forefront of the agency's role into the study of UAP and the non-human intelligence which controls them. To this day, Liberation Times understands that WCPMMC can collaborate with the DoD and DOE to offer its expertise in analyzing materials of alleged non-human origin, in addition to collecting and analyzing UAP intelligence from agencies across the U.S. government. Sources have informed Liberation Times that when the CIG and later CIA inherited the Magenta craft study, it was the primary agency involved, preceding the establishment of the NSA, DIA, NRO, and NGA. Today, Liberation Times understands that the WCPM's MC's access to studying non-human materials is conditional, right? Requiring authorization from both the DoD and the DOE. This means the DoD and DOE can choose to bypass the WCPM-MC should they decide that the mission center's external expertise is not needed, right? All right, we're almost done. Let's just read it. In terms of retrieval operations, officers from the CIA's Directorate of Operations are assigned to the WCPM-MC, granting its leadership direct access to intelligence on missions involving non-human material recovery. This includes missions led by the Directorate of Operations Maritime Branch, which specializes in undersea retrievals, all right, underwater retrievals. Sources have informed Liberation Times that additional types of retrieval operations occur between the CIA and certain elements of the DoD, right? So they're basically just saying the CIA is kind of behind a lot of this, right? The DoD, the DOE, there's a lot of people, a lot of departments involved with this, which is why it's convoluted, maybe on purpose, right? Which makes sense. These operations are understood to include recoveries of non-human materials in cave systems involving elements of the U.S. Army. What? Cave systems? Are we talking about crypto-terrestrials? Does this have something to do with the Nazca mummies in Peru? I don't know. That's just interesting. However, Liberation Times currently lacks sufficient information to report in detail on these allegations. The alleged network of retrieval operations, UAP tracking, agency responsibilities, and collaboration, including analysis and reverse engineering efforts, forms a highly complex web. Yeah, that's the understatement in this entire article. If accurate, okay, if accurate, it reveals a secrecy shrouded by multiple layers of bureaucracy, making it challenging for elected officials who are now striving to understand and address allegations of a cover-up of monumental proportions. Remember, these are all sources telling Liberation Times, right? And we got to take it with a grain of salt, but this is very thought out, right? Like this article and everything that it lays out. Basically, starting with the Magenta craft recovery to where we are today, that's the system, right? All these offices created alongside the Manhattan Project that branches off, and then boom, there it begins. But it all begins in Italy and the study of the Magenta craft, right? It's like a croissant, right? If you've ever seen how croissants are made, like the layering is honestly phenomenal, right? We're talking, it's such a finite technical thing to do to make it right. Just layer after layer after layer after layer after layer on top of it, because it's like try to separate one layer in that croissant. Good luck. Because they're so formed on top of each other just perfectly. Right? Just like a well, it's just it's crazy. If this is true, right? If this story is true. But it's fascinating. And now the idea is, well, I want to know more about this Magenta Italy situation, right? So look, last thing we're going to do is look into this Magenta Italy crash. Hang on. Now, Chris Sharp wrote an article in 2023 about this because this guy came out, this Italian researcher. Let me bring that up. Boom. Exclusive. Italian researcher shares extraordinary evidence files of world's first UFO crash 14 years before Roswell and the secret department set up by Mussolini's government to study the craft that was later captured. Is that on the screen? Oh, my bad. Hang on. Oh, good old Daily Mail ads. Let me read that again. Exclusive. Italian researcher shares extraordinary evidence files of world's first UFO crash 14 years before Roswell and the secret department set up by Mussolini's government to study the craft that was later captured by U.S. forces. Well, interesting that it's being dubbed as the world's first UFO crash, right? How far back does the phenomena go? And they only start crashing in Italy? All right, let's continue. Robert Benotti obtained evidence documents of the alleged June 13th, 1933 crash in northern Italy and a secret department set up by Mussolini to study the craft. He told DailyMail.com the files were mailed to him from a mysterious source who claimed to have inherited them from a relative who worked on the program. Right. Comes after Pentagon whistleblower David Grush claimed the U.S. ran a top-secret UFO retrieval program for decades and claimed the Vatican was involved. And David Grush has spoken about this Magenta craft before in this crash. He has completely spoken about it. You know, he has talked about it. But basically, right, again, a top U.S. intelligence officer claims World War II American forces retrieved a UFO that crashed in Italy in 1933. So they're not saying that we recovered the craft in 1933 from Italy. It wasn't until World War II, right? During that time, that's when America got involved. But for a decade or more, Italy was studying it with German scientists, right? Trying to figure this thing out, right? And Mussolini had set up the special program to study this thing. Again, so it crashes just outside of Milan, Italy. Is that why we get all that great fashion from there? Yeah, okay. Captured by American forces at the end of World War II and shipped to the U.S. And here is the Italian researcher. Right. And this is an artist's impression of the alleged 1933 UFO crash. You can see right there. Now let's look at this gallery. Now, Penotti was also sent handwritten memos on paper with a government agency letterhead dated August 22nd, 1936, which include a sketch and description pictured of a cylindrical aircraft with portholes on the sides and white and red lights spotted flying over northern Italy. So a cylindrical craft, right? Which kind of looks like a rocket of some sort. But the artist's impression is just a standard flying saucer, which is interesting. But again, Penotti said he didn't get this till just recently, right? The documents include, right, the documents that he received, right, from a mysterious source saying that his relative worked on this Mussolini program, right, back in Italy in the 1930s and early 40s. The documents include 2 June 1933 telegrams in Italian demanding absolute silence over an alleged landing on national soil of unknown craft. That's interesting, right? So you can see the telegram here, and underneath it, a personal order of the DUCE. It is disposed immediate arrest, diffusion of news related to aircraft of unknown nature and origin of which in dispatch. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. You can see another one here. Absolute silence is ordered, right, on presumed landing on national soil of unknown aircraft, right? Another, dated June 13th, threatens the immediate arrest and maximum penalties for any journalist reporting news of an aircraft of unknown nature and origin. So they didn't want anybody talking about this. In fact, they suggest, you can see in the telegram, meteor, right? Say it's a meteor. That's what they wanted people reporting, not that there was potentially a craft. You couldn't even say that. But this is also during the times of Mussolini, right? Other documents sent to Penotti refer to a mysterious government department called Gabinetto RS/33, or the RS Special Research 33 Cabinet, supposedly set up by the Italian dictator, right? So Gabinetto supposedly is this program to study this Magenta craft that, again, later became the basis before Roswell of the UAP program, secrecy, everything. From the mysterious documents, Pinotti was able to pinpoint SIAI Marchetti in Vergiate. Am I saying that right? Vergiate, an aircraft facility near the alleged crash site outside Magenta, a satellite town of Milan, as the likely site where the supposed wreckage was stored. So this building right here, supposedly where they kept this craft. Again, some different documents here. You can see if anyone knows Italian. I speak Spanish, but so this is sort of saying like escrito means like written, escrito. Talking about names, okay. That's Pedante. Association of Official Analytical Chemists. Contratato dal Robert Pinotti. Okay. Receive formal. Oh man, you know what? I better not try to even do this. I don't really speak Italian, y'all. It's some things can be similar. Like I can see some words that I understand, but not entirely what's going on. So if anyone speaks Italian, they could translate this. That would be great. The Italian researcher had one of his documents dated 1936 tested by a forensic expert who concluded the paper and ink was from that period. Look at this picture. Marco Negri, whose family had lived in northern Italy for over a century, said his great-great-grandfather, Pietro Negri, told stories to his father of a strange metallic aircraft without wings that crashed in Magenta in the 1930s. Magenta, sorry. Pinotti's research has been met with skepticism in Italy since he first released it in 2000s and is still little known outside its borders until now. Pinotti, San Marino Science and Culture Minister Andrea Belluzzi and fellow CUN executive Paolo Guisardi at the San Marino Science and Culture Government Office this month. And basically, they started something called Project Titan. That's recently, right? 19th January of this year. I remember when they had this. And there he is, right? So that's the story. And there's more to it, right? You can do a little research on this Magenta Italy crash, but the significance of that alleged crash study and then cover up is fascinating, right? And that basically American forces got a hold of it because, well, I guess we won the war, right? World War II. And we got it from Italy and made it our own and then built a program around it, right? The question then becomes, is that the same crap that Lockheed Martin had that we were trying to get? Or there have been more crashes. Clearly, that's what they talk about. And we recovered them, analyzed them, and we used defense contractors, DOE, DOD, all kinds of different people, CIA, all their different offices, to sort of break it all apart and get it studied and analyzed, and then studied from different parts, right? The propulsion, what are the intention of these crafts, the origin of the people in them, right? The chemical compound, whatever. It's just broken up and sent all over the place, and it does make it very hard to trace, right? It does make it very hard to look in, like, what are we looking for, right? It's not one program, or excuse me, it's not one department. It's multiple departments, again, stretch across decades, becoming just as important, if not more secretive than our, nuclear whatever research and capabilities that we have, right? The nuclear program, if you will. Again, it's kind of implied that this Magenta study was part of the Manhattan Project, but the Manhattan Project was started during World War II. Before that, so did it like the Manhattan Project was already going? Then we got the craft. It's hard to say, right? When exactly did we get the craft? At what point? What was that a part of? But again, are we ever going to know? I don't know. But it is interesting to think that that is what started it all, not Roswell. You know, and was Roswell like, oh, we got our own, right? In Italy, they go, oh, we got our own. And did we get it just before Roswell? And if that's the case, then that means when Roswell happened, we would know way more about what's going on, right, at that point. And did the craft look similar? It doesn't sound like it, right? What's being described in Magenta is like a cylindrical object. And Roswell isn't described that way, that craft. So I don't know. I just, this is definitely fascinating to me for sure. So look, guys, this has been a long stream. I'm going to address some of these super chats and maybe a few questions and then call it here. So let me jump in. Thank y'all for hanging out. Looks like we got a crowd back after that mishap earlier. From Paj, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate you. Curtis Barber says 4SC. I don't know what that means. Oh, 4 super chat for 20 total. Please respond. Would you do a joint live with UFO Jesus, Clint, Pavel, Christian Harloff, whether November 13th or 18th, 19th? I would. It's not up to me. I think everyone wants to do their own live stream or whatever. It would be a better idea to not split all the audiences up, you know, but, you know, it's hard to coordinate that kind of stuff, to be honest. I think Schellenberger's witness and the other rumored witnesses could be at the hearing next week, like this week. Sure. Oh, okay. Like this week is to tell Congress and the world Immaculate Constellation exists, and next week would be first that worked on under that James Fox the program. And does anyone else think that the fourth witness is like Bigelow's version of a Senate staffer? Like he's upset at Lockheed for not sharing info but can't do the hearing? I'm not sure I understand a lot of that, to be honest with you. But thank you for the super chats. I really appreciate it. You know, there was talk of, could there be a secret witness? Could they have a mystery witness presented, right? A surprise witness that testifies tomorrow at the hearing. I don't know. I don't know how that works. That would be fascinating, right? All of a sudden, boom, there's this other person with whatever, right? Like, I don't know if that's possible, right? They're giving their testimony beforehand before they even go in. They're writing it out. So I don't know if that's kind of thing is allowed, but that is interesting. I think David Grush cursing says something. I trust him. I mean, he's a real person, you know? He's a real person. So I get it. Now, I like David Grush for sure. Well, the shoot hit the fan, or will we be shoot on again? We'll find out. Again, that will be up for everyone to decide. Everyone's going to have their own expectations going into this. So it's that simple. Right? I don't want to poo-poo on it for other people if they're excited about it, nor do I want to give in to the other side that isn't excited about it, right? Like, to each their own. You decide for yourself. All today was just kind of going over different things that have been said publicly, right? Again, I have made no claims today in this live stream, nor do I ever. I have no sources. I don't claim to know anything. I stay away from all that. Now, I'm just reporting on things that are said publicly and giving my opinion, which I think a lot of people watching may have similar or different ones. We're all allowed our own opinions. Again, this is at a hearing asking for taxpayer money. People are testifying to things they learned with taxpayer funds. I'm allowed to ask questions. It's that simple. It's that simple. And you should too. And that should be your reason if someone gives you any shit. Hey, man, this is taxpayer money we're talking about. I'm allowed to ask questions. especially if you're American, right? It's pretty simple. If they're not asking for taxpayer money, they don't want Congress involved, then that's a different story. But that's not the case here, right? This is literally about taxpayer funding. They're asking for more research money, this, that, what NASA budget, you know, all these things. I mean, money's involved. So, yeah. And the whole thing is about the misallocation of funds and this cover up. Yeah. We should be allowed to ask questions. All right, y'all. This has been a long stream. I am tired of talking. My horse, my horse, my horse. I am in Texas. My voice is getting a little hoarse. I can feel it. But I'm glad I did this live stream instead of the video I was going to put together. So I was able to get into a lot more details. But I probably could have made a more comprehensive video of like 30 minutes. But again, the editing to go into that. So look, there was a little moment during the live stream where it went out and came back. I didn't even notice it till the chat said something. But that was taken care of. What happened? I have no idea. Right, at the end of the day, I honestly don't know. Could it be somebody trying to mess with the stream? Clearly something was going on. But whatever, doesn't matter. We're here, we're talking. Am I hopeful for tomorrow's hearing? Yeah, I am. And that's for me to decide and you to decide for yourself. But me personally, yeah, why not? Of course. Let's hear what they got to say. Let's get them on the record under oath. Let's talk to them. Let's let what I'm more looking forward to than anything. Okay, their pre-written testimony was released and all that. Great. What I'm more looking forward to more than anything is what Congress members are going to ask them about, right? Because if you remember from the last hearing, some of the best bits from that hearing were Congress asking them questions, i.e. Nancy Mace asking David Grush to clarify about the bodies, right? And this and that. Getting that kind of stuff on the record, getting them to really nail down exactly what they're saying, right? Which is why Nancy Mace is heading this one. Now, I will say this. The last hearing we had was 16 months ago. So I hope we don't have to wait another 16 months in the House to have a hearing like this. And I would ask the question to Congress, do you think it's viable to ask the American people who they would want to see testify and then go subpoena those people? So, for instance, James Lukatsky saying, I don't want to testify. Does he get a choice? Right? He's using taxpayer-funded money to find out about a craft of unknown origin and getting money for a program, right? Taxpayer money to try to get this crap back from Lockheed, and now he doesn't want to testify? Should he have a choice? I don't mean James as a person, okay? Nothing against the guys personally. None of this is personal. But him as a person, as a government official, working with taxpayer money, right? We should subpoena him, like force him to testify. Sorry, you don't get to say no to that, right? Is that really where we're at? So either Congress needs to start using subpoena power to getting some of the people that either they want or putting it out to the public of who we would like to see testify. That may not be a good idea, i.e. Bodie McBoatface, if you know what I'm talking about. That's a internet reference there. Maybe asking the public for this help may not be a good idea. But, you know, because at this point, how are the witnesses being decided? Are people coming to Congress and then Congress is just choosing from those people and going, yeah, okay, this person, that, you know, or do they have a wish list of people and like, let's go get this guy and that guy and let's bring them in? Sounds like it's a mix, right? But clearly some people won't testify. Just literally they're going on vacation. They have other plans. So I don't know, man. It's very confusing. But either way, I am looking forward to it. I'll be live streaming it tomorrow. Check it out with me. Hang out. I'll add some commentary where I can. But mainly there'll be a post-hearing conversation for sure that we can all have together about this and see what we learn. Could there be a mysterious witness? Sure. I don't actually know, right? Is Michael Schellenberger testifying a red flag? Well, just for context purposes, lots of journalists testify before Congress. And he added the most exhaustive paperwork, right? And whatever you think of that, right? The story, right? Appendix, over 200 pages documenting different sources of how his story came together exactly. So honestly, he's probably the one we'll learn the most from tomorrow. Will be Michael Schellenberger. That's my guess. Mike Gold will be interesting for sure. You know, Lou Elizondo, we've heard his story. Tim Gallaudet, we've heard that story too, but, you know, getting it on the record. But I think Michael Schellenberger is the one to watch out for tomorrow. I'm going to end it here. Yo, you keeping it real. My man, keep up the good work, Patrick. Thanks, Jesse James. Appreciate you, brother. And thank you to everyone that watched, hung out, stuck with me through all of this. I'm going to take a short break and then jump into our Discord open mic. If you want to join there, it's free to join our Discord where we have conversations pretty much every day after every video premieres. We get in there and jump on the mics and just kind of discuss free form, right? Think of it like a Twitter space, that sort of scenario. Everyone's allowed to talk and give their opinion, and we all listen and just be respectful and not disruptive, and we can all have a great conversation. Whatever you think, whatever your opinion is, right? Bring it in. Just be respectful. All right, guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow at the hearing. That will be, again, 10:30 my time. So it's an hour and a half earlier than when my video normally comes out. Now, I'll probably go live before that, maybe 10 as a kind of pregame, just hanging out, getting ready. So it'll probably be the case. I'll have the link and everything ready on Vetted's YouTube channel very soon. So you'll be able to, sign up for that or whatever, save it or however that works. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed this deep dive on the hearing, and I hope you learned some things and what to look for and whatever. This is exciting. So I know I have some things that I want to be looking into for the next few weeks, regardless of this hearing, right? And don't let the hearing distract you or discourage you from the search for truth about this phenomena, because apart from the hearing and apart from government involvement, this phenomena is worldwide and affects millions of people who have nothing to do with government positions or programs or anything, right? So, we can separate the two. So even if you're disappointed about tomorrow's hearing, don't worry about it. And even if you're not, you're excited about it, great. I'm here for that too, right? So anyway, we'll see you guys at tomorrow's hearing. Thank y'all so much. Love y'all. We'll see you tomorrow. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through eyes covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.